Hey guys, welcome back to Pillbox Movies. I'm Hank, and today we're going to be checking out the 1931 American horror movie, Frankenstein. This is a film directed by James Whale and produced by Universal Pictures under Carl Laemmle. The movie is one of the most important in American cinema, in world cinema. It is justifiably iconic for its introduction to the American screen of the monster Frankenstein, otherwise known as Frankenstein's monster. But yeah, I wanted to check out the roots of this studio, of this actor, of this genre of American filmmaking. And so, without further ado, let's check out Frankenstein. And before we get started, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films.
How do you do? Mr. Carl Laemmle feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning.
Oh, I was wondering where the inspiration came for that intro in Treehouse of Horror.
It may shock you. It might even...
But it will horrify you. Carl Laemmle. From the novel by Mrs. Percy B. Shelley. The monster played by ? Who could it be? I saw a documentary on horror films discussing the release of this and Dracula. That Dracula was based on a stage play, and it was very kind of staid for being the first surviving sound horror film. It was actually pretty like flat or commonplace production, and it was really the idea or the plot that people got a thrill of. And in contrast to that, immediately with the production of Frankenstein, they started at a gravesite, at a funeral. It's already horrific in its imagery and its presentation and its atmosphere, and just a huge swing, a huge step in evolution from where Dracula starts. I mean, you've got friggin' grave robbers. In the vein of Dickens and Great Expectations, you really got to set the scene. This is already beautiful, beautiful production design. Not unexpected if you've seen like movies from like the 20s or so in Germany, but surprising to see in a studio film from 1931. Oh, guess you're gonna have to take the rotten one now. But this is a wonderful invention for the film, just like a very pyrotechnical display, a really exciting, visual, audacious way to present the creation of life. Perfectly horrific, perfectly morbid, gothic, and also like, in a way, tying the idea of the monster to the idea of technological advancement, to the industries that were blossoming and coming into full fruition in the 20th century.
15 minutes, the storm should be at its height. Then we'll be ready. What's that?
I've got too much to do.
Oh, this is wonderful with the shadow play.
What do you want? Let us in! You must leave me alone.
And this is also something that's played up in the old dark house, obviously, interrupting a person on a rainy, torrential night at a very inopportune time.
Crazy, am I? We'll see whether I'm crazy or not.
Oh, wow. It's a really cool usage of Tesla currents. I love this imagery of like lifting the cadaver up to the heavens. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a inverted or perversion on the ascendancy to heaven rather than the soul escaping. The storm is sending a devil back down to Earth.
It's moving.
There's something about Boris Karloff that's so captivating. He just knows how to bring theatricality to the movements of a finger.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! In the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God!
The brain that was stolen from my laboratory was a criminal brain.
Oops. Uh-oh. I actually wonder when the research came about as to like nature versus nurture, like social conditioning. It's an interesting dialogue that this movie's having with that. Like, ostensibly, you'd think that it's a straight one-to-one where the movie is saying that an evil brain will bear out an evil human. I think that's like a pretty reasonable, flat interpretation of the text. But I think that there's also an interesting qualifier to that Frankenstein's monster, I think as depicted in this film, is actually pretty reasonable and normal. He's actually within conditions that will turn him into a monster, either the fear of the villagers or the own psychosis of Frankenstein himself. And so to do with James Whale himself, perhaps, there's an interesting interpretation of the monster as being an innocent, despite the social revulsion he causes. That could be interpreted as, like, you know, queer subtext or othering kind of subtext. Yeah, Boris Karloff is just magical. So many iconic performances.
Sit down.
It's really good with his costuming and his makeup and stuff. Because, like, I know Boris Karloff as being really kind of, like, gaunt. But he's really filled out his presentation with this jacket and whatever else effects he's filled out on the inside, and extending his head with that prosthetic and that wig. It's good work. And his eyes just glow, especially in The Mummy. It's emphasized in The Mummy, but his eyes are just so penetrating, so effective.
Take care now, Frankenstein. Take care.
It's really beautiful. It's like his soul wishes to ascend back to heaven that has been trapped in this mortal coil. And it's a creature that's desirous of its own liberation.
Frankenstein, where is it? Where is it? Ah! Quiet, you fool! Get away with that torch!
Of course, he's afraid of fire. Primal fear. See, this might be interpreted as a little bit of the nurture aspect, a little bit of the conditioning aspect, constantly torturing this new life. It doesn't seem like it's a great tack to take.
Listen, what's that? What's that?
Yeah, hopefully Franz is dead. Him. Fritz, sorry, not Franz. Fritz. It's good use of shadows again. For whatever reason, Fritz is kind of characterized by his silhouette. I mean, I guess he's characterized by his silhouette because he has scoliosis, but...
Come, pull yourself together. What can we do? Kill it. I do with any savage animal. Ready? Yes.
That's nice. You could actually see the camera shake a little bit, because with this set, I don't think they could implement tracks, but you could kind of see it like rolling a bit, shaking a bit on its like its trolley or whatever. Yeah, you really get a sense in this version how much like Frankenstein, the monster Frankenstein, is confined and tortured at every step, that despite the monster being a miracle, it's always treated as more of a threat or a terror than anything else. Grab a bit of cake. Nah, he's a neck man.
It's like heaven being with you again.
Heaven wasn't so far away all the time, you know.
I know. But I didn't realize it.
Even back in the 30s, filmmakers were making movies about guys who work too hard and ignore their families. Oh wow, this is a beautiful shot. This isn't something I was expecting from this film that's so like indebted to its studio location. So having this broad, sweeping, on-location shot of a Bavarian countryside, that is cool.
Oh, no. Franz goes by, tell him I'll be back.
This was filmed in like California, wasn't it? They've managed to do really, I don't know. I don't know if it's accurate, but it's evocative. It's evocative of like a German countryside, of a Bavarian countryside.
Will you play with me?
Iconic scene, known the world over. I'm sure it has a happy ending. It's wonderful how again how expressive Karloff's performance is, even just through his hands. It manages to say a lot about the kind of like sensitivity, the daintiness and affection that's shown in the monster, but also the his kind of whatever innate twistedness, his innate otherness.
I can make a boat.
Literally the first human being to just talk with him.
Mine float?
I'll make you float. We all float down here. Oops, Daisy. I mean, we make light of it nowadays because it's just been in the public consciousness for so long, and there have been movies that have done far, far worse since then. But imagine the shock this must have been to an audience in the 1930s, even an audience that's familiar with the source material. In viewing this movie, you might have thought that revenge would have been visited upon Frankenstein or upon his wife. So seeing the murder of the accidental death killing of the little girl in lieu of that is a shock. Yeah, I mean, that's another cool shot.
Henry, I'm afraid. Terribly afraid. I felt it all day. Something is coming between us. I know it.
Sit down and rest. You look so tired.
Oh my God, do not say that to a woman on her wedding day.
Oh, dear.
Henry, don't leave. Don't leave me.
No, darling, you stay here.
Henry. Henry.
Dr. Bowman's been murdered.
You're just allowed to treat your wife like this.
Been seen in the hills, terror.
And again, there's a little bit of a sexual bent to this scene, at least, where the monster enacts his revenge on the fiance of Frankenstein, and there's like a kind of like sexually aggressive energy to it. Yeah, the way she's splayed out on the bed, it does have a, for me, it does have a certain kind of suggestiveness to it. That poor girl. She just has to have her head hanging upside down for this entire shot. And I really like the refocus of this one continuous shot. It's kind of like a reflection of the earlier shot of the town, seeing it like all in bustle and celebration, and now having this one focus charting through the town, kind of like silencing all the celebrations. Yeah, kill him. I actually wonder. I'm guessing that Henry Frankenstein is in the sequels, but I'm kind of like, you know, kill him. I love the sound of their footsteps on the ground, because it's completely hollow underneath. You can actually hear the reverberation. I do wonder, like a narcissistic parent or whatever, I do wonder if Henry Frankenstein is ever able to see his creature for who he actually is. I'm not saying that he isn't a monster or a killer or whatever, but whatever Henry sees in him is kind of a projection or a pronouncement. rather than ever taking him for what he is. Oh! Oh! He got the Saruman death? I had no idea. I love, this is so weirdly, I don't know if it's just a costume design in particular for a mob, but they just decided to have them, give them all fedoras when they were historically accurate or like geographically accurate during the festivities. Now they're all wearing American suits and hats. Oh man, those screams from Karloff. I mean, that is horrifying. I wonder if for like a 30s audience, if that ending is intended to be like triumphant or ambiguous or horrific. Yeah, that was fun. Iconic. The birth of American horror, the birth of Universal horror, the restoration of Universal and the Laemmle's legacy. I don't really need to add too much to it. You either have seen, Frankenstein, or the effect it's had on popular culture. Just to restate the obvious, I think Karloff's performance in it is really captivating, and it kind of like Lugosi. I think he is like an Eastern European emigre or something like that. Right. He was a British actor and he was quarter Indian, but he had taken on numerous roles in Hollywood without ever really getting recognition until this, and this jump-started his career and gave him a new kind of lease in Hollywood and established a pretty good reputation, much better reputation than Lugosi's comparatively. But yeah, obviously he did a lot of he did a lot of monster movies past that point and had a pretty great career. I can definitely understand that this being his like most iconic or his most recognizable performance. I think for an audience in the 30s, this is like the most differentiated from anything else that you would see on the screen, and this is not like a performance that is normal or expected, and he brought a lot of humanity as well as his own personal flair for the grotesque to the role, and I think that it's reasonably iconic. It is justifiably iconic. For my taste, I think if you haven't seen him in The Mummy, he's like really, really good in The Mummy, like captivating and seductive in a way that kind of surprised me for a 1932 film. So I'd recommend you check that out. And he's kind of like that in the other roles that I've seen him in. He's a bit of a, I don't know. He's arch. He's impressive. You definitely notice when he's on the screen. And yeah, there were parts of this where I was like, it was recognizably James Whale from what I know of him and what I know of like the kind of movies that he does. Like it seemed very manicured, and the sets were like impressive, but like I was expecting a lot of like inside of a sound stage, inside of like constructed sets and stuff, kind of filmmaking to this. And so when there were brief departures from that, whether it be like the on location shots in the California countryside, or even just like the moving camera shots, I thought were really impressive, going from one room to another. That had a bit more flair than what I was expecting to be mostly static shots on the part of Whale. So that was impressive too. Yeah, this movie was a triumph for everybody involved. It was a home run. I don't really need to recommend that you give it a watch, but you should give it a watch if you've never seen it before. It's a bedrock to American cinema, to American horror, and it's one of the most important films that's ever graced the silver screen. So yeah, that was Frankenstein. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. In the meantime, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. And until next time, we should check out The Bride of Frankenstein. Today, in continuation with our first-time watches of the Frankenstein series, we'll be watching the 1935 sequel, The Bride of Frankenstein. This is also a Universal picture, also directed by James Whale, the director of the first movie. It came out 4 years after the original and stars Boris Karloff, Colin, Clive, Ernest Thesiger, and Elsa Lancaster in Role Unknown. This is the much celebrated sequel of the original movie. Many have called it one of the greatest horror films ever made, and much has been made about the movie and possible different interpretations of the movie. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So without further ado, let's watch The Bride of Frankenstein. They've changed the logo already. And in stark contrast to the first film, where the actor playing the monster was hidden, immediately we get Karloff. Elsa Lancaster, featured previously on this channel with Secret Garden, 1949. Also the wife of Charles Lawton. I'd be interested to see what a day in that marriage would look like. And the change in tone as well from Mrs. Percy B. Shelley to Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. I like that the women are still in like festival garb when all the men are dressed in American mob clothing. There's Karloff doing his hand acting again. Oh my god! I see they've invested in bigger or more ornate sets now. This seems like more expansive, more dynamic. You can kind of like feel that the camera is given a little bit more latitude, not to just rove around horizontally, but to kind of navigate the space.
Speak to me, Henry.
Oh, my lady, he'll never.
Is this a different Elizabeth too? Oh, it's Valerie Hobson. Oh, the original actress for Elizabeth was sick, and that's why Valerie Hobson replaced her. That's sad. Yeah, see, this bedroom setup looks a lot better than what was Elizabeth's room in the previous movie. They've obviously done well for themselves since the first movie. And you kind of see an extension of the ideas that Whale was developing in the first movie of the moving camera, of kind of tracking the movements. It's a lot less kind of static and tableau-ish.
Tell him that Dr. Pretorius is here on a secret matter of grave importance and must see him alone.
He's a very queer-looking old gentleman, sir, and must see you on a secret grave matter, he said. Tonight. Alone.
Perhaps unintentional, but a lot of kind of double entendre in the words that are being used.
Dr. Pretorius.
Queer fellow, grave matter.
All that I am going to show you. But perhaps now that you are my partner, you can.
This is a kind of archness that is dissimilar to Karloff's, perhaps in the same region, the same family of theater performers, but of a certain different affectation.
What are these? There is a pleasing variety about my exhibits.
Ooh, that is cool. That's like, oh, shoot. There's a Todd Browning movie like that. It's not Devil Doll, is it? But there's a Todd Browning movie where Lionel Barrymore plays an inventor who creates like miniatures and uses them as assassins. It's a really funny concept for a movie of that time. And he also like cross-dresses. It's a really weird movie.
Is the very devil. Very bizarre, this little chap. There's a certain resemblance to
I'm going to pause for a second. I'm quite surprised, actually, given there's only 4 years' time. For me, like, good and bad, this seems like the shift in tone, the advancement in tone from, like, Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery to Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me. Clearly, success has made a lot of changes in the production, and whether it's because Whale's been given more control or the public disposition for horror in its kind of like grotesqueries has increased, it's the movie has become increasingly much more arch than its predecessor, where its predecessor aimed for a kind of a serious presentation, a morbid presentation, a shocking presentation, but it still fell within the realm of of simplicity in its storytelling. This has gone on a wild divergence, which is funny to think about, that this is happening concurrently with the other story that this happens like directly after. This is one of those things where I think I have to imagine that for an audience within the scope of 4 years, this is a natural progression. But seeing the two movies in tandem, back to back, nearly as a double feature, it's such a stark change in tone that I'm almost kind of like taken out of it by how much of a shift has been made, both production-wise from Frankenstein to the Bride of Frankenstein, and from the story, the 7 days, about a week of Frankenstein, to the next day in the Bride of Frankenstein. It's a really, really wild shift in tone.
This isn't science.
Yeah.
It's more like black magic.
Yeah. The difference in tone from the technological or the scientific to the fantastical or the magical.
You think I'm mad? Perhaps I am. But listen, Henry Frankenstein. While you were digging in
his eyes are like glowing. A fine face for horror.
Alone you have created a man. Now together we will create his mate, a woman. That should be really interesting.
Jesus Christ. Oh, but I do miss the California countryside. They didn't need to build a set for this scene. Come on. In a way, I'm kind of surprised, because Karloff is, first billing, he is the standout from the first movie. We'll see how the movie progresses, obviously, but I actually think, whether it's because of the script or because of Whale's direction, the monster has taken a bit of a backseat to the plot. There was a lot of ways in which the first film introduced us to the monster, got us acclimated to him. So much of the first movie was reliant on the way we saw his hands, the way he kind of accepted or rejected things that were given to him. And this one, it's turned into kind of an adventure movie. It's like chase, run, chase, run. And it's like The Spy Who Shagged Me. It's fallen into a specific cadence of a movie that's like a popular sequel. I don't want to make it seem like it's all bad. Spy Who Shagged Me is generally viewed as much weaker than International Man of Mystery. So we'll say the difference between Alien and Aliens, where if your taste is like Aliens for the adventure part, for the action part, this definitely has a lot more of that stuff. And it's less psychological and less cerebral than the first one.
Bring him down when you bound him.
You want any help there? I'll bind him.
See, the townsfolk barely talked in the last movie. But now now this woman, for whatever reason, is practically made a POV character. Oh, come on. Symbolism! I think I would say, in some ways, the movie is more explicitly sympathetic to Frankenstein's monster's perspective in this one. I just don't think we get as much of his perspective. I think we're, in broad strokes, meant to understand that he's the one that's being punished, that he's the one being chased. But we kind of understand that from a plot point of view, rather than from a character point of view.
Quite simple. Check him out. Come on, men. Get back to your work.
You can kind of see the specific bent that Whale likes to work in terms of his sets, the way he designs them. As he kind of has this slant, this triangulation to the way that he designs his sets, where the focal point is put up camera right. I think in some ways, I don't quite remember, but in some ways the old Dark House is like that too. Especially the way they shoot the entranceway, at least to the house. It's kind of exhausting how fast-paced this is in comparison to the first movie. I mean, I have the similar qualms about Aliens too, so it's a matter of taste if you like this kind of change. It's, I don't know, we'll see how the second half of this movie goes, but it's very, very strange, I think, the way that Karloff's performance has been depicted in this movie in comparison to the first one. I don't want to say Karloff's performance has gotten worse, but the way it's framed, the way it's shot, it's so much less interested in his subtleties, the nuances he brings to the role, and it's packed him into like this more hectic plot. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's strange given, I think, the success of the first one is built on his performance as the monster.
I cannot see you. I cannot see anything. What's the matter? You're hurt, my poor friend.
I do like this connection, though, because this is something that's reinforced an idea of the monster in the first movie, that he's portrayed, he's characterized by a sense of touch, and so this moment of warmth and recognition with the blind man is sealed with the grasping of the hands.
Put your hand on my shoulder.
It's the touch. The touch is how we communicate with each other.
No.
You sexy, sexy monster.
And it's been a long time since any human being came into this hut.
It's like Criminal Lovers. If you want to see an interesting version of this scene play out in a movie, you should watch the Francois Ozon movie, Criminal Lovers.
And now out of the silence of the night, and sent me a friend, to be a light to mine eyes.
Oh yeah.
And a comfort.
It's the scene in Criminal Lovers. Friend's a really loaded term in cinema. It can have a lot of meanings.
And this is wine to drink. Good. Good.
I do miss the subtlety of the first performance.
No. This is good. Smoke.
This is like famous, isn't it? Like Frankenstein smoking. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Good.
This will adorn weed shops throughout the nation. Oh no. It's happening again. In some ways, Frankenstein is like a funny monster to me because, like, he doesn't have agency. He doesn't have complete agency in these situations. But whether through the mechanics of plot contrivance, of filmmaking, or through some hidden characteristic, some innate part of his character, he always manages to find himself in these crises over and over again. And you're like, if it keeps involving you. I do understand also it's because he's persecuted to a certain degree. But it reminds me of like Louise Brooks's character in Pandora's Box, where Lulu keeps on finding herself in these circumstances of sexual intrigue or criminality or whatnot, and you couldn't necessarily say the character intended for all of these things to happen. But there's a degree of innocence and yet sexual allure to the character that makes you question how much she was perhaps inviting it. Dangerous path to walk down, but something we ponder, at least narratively. It's a different kind of arch, but it is arch. He is living for this performance.
I thought I was alone. Smoke.
I would have thought that this smoke meme was like from a different sequel, from a less serious sequel, like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein or something like that. But the meme is from Bride of Frankenstein.
Good evening, Henry.
I can see some of the arguments of Bride of Frankenstein being like a queer text, much more kind of open display of James Whale's own experiences with his own sexuality. Thesiger's was a gay performer as well. But aside from his performance, I don't necessarily read as much about the queer subtext to the movie.
Everything is now ready for you and me to begin our supreme collaboration.
Don't tell me of it. I don't want to hear. I've changed my mind. I won't do it.
Okay, well, this seems a little bit more explicit to me.
I expected this.
I mean, much more so than the first one. I think this movie is playing on, like, male relationships and male power relationships. I mean, okay, this is getting more explicit than I was imagining previously. But like, it's the first one is about male power and the dominance that Frankenstein has over his monster. But this is kind of like triangulated into kind of like a poly territory where it's about the push and pull between mentor and mentee, creator and creation, and all these kind of like different male relationships or male dynamics kind of fighting for dominance, and also the shame that Frankenstein feels towards his creation being readable as like a shame over one's own sexuality. Like, Henry Frankenstein has this idea of himself that his relationship with Elizabeth is the real him, and there's the hidden version of himself that is characterized by his monster that is doing battle with that public-facing persona, and which one's the real version of himself. But I also think that's present in the first one as well.
Elizabeth, she's dead.
Elizabeth is alive and she is well.
In a few moments from now, she will speak to you from where she is through this electrical machine.
Where is she?
It's that movie again. That other Boris Karloff movie. The, whatever it is. The Devil Commands. That's kinky as shit.
Shall we put the heart in now? Yes.
Ludwig, bring it over.
Is the whole last act of this movie going to be in canted angles? It is a fun, I guess, inversion of the first one, that it actually like takes the plot beats of Frankenstein 1931 and does them in the reverse order, that we have the chase sequence for the first third of the movie, and we're kind of ending on this slower note of the creation of the monster again, which was featured in the first act of the 31 movie. I don't know if I like it, but it is an interesting inversion. Oh yeah, that's some beautiful camera movement. But I do like the effectiveness of taking something that was already like depicted in the first movie and in the first act, and is kind of like the set piece of the first movie, and trying to do it over again in the second one in a newer, more brilliant fashion.
She's alive! Alive!
I guess you had to do it. Iconic design.
Friend?
You hate to see it. You do hate to see it. She's got an electric complex. She's in love with her daddy. Yeah, again, reinforcing the communication through the hands. Which is why I kind of agree with Karloff that it was kind of a nonsense idea to have Frankenstein speak in this one. But Frankenstein has done a lot of things in this movie that I wouldn't necessarily agree with.
She hate me.
She hate me.
Look out! The lever! Get away from that lever! You'll blow us all to atoms!
Under the door!
Wasn't expecting Frankenstein to turn into an incel. This movie has like crushed Frankenstein's identity from the gentle misunderstood giant of the first one into a full-blown incel in this. And so the natural order is restored. The horror movie once again ends with the heterosexual couple consummating, or not consummating, reaffirming their love. Yeah, I'm glad this movie has its fans. I kind of, for my part, have a bit of sequel fatigue with regards to it. I think it has all the trappings, the good and bad of any kind of like successful sequel, that it's much more grand. It's got a lot of more money behind it. The ideas of the first movie are kind of like downplayed, and the things that are emphasized is like the pyrotechnics or the stagecraft or the thrills and excitement in the sequel. I definitely think that there's an audience for the kind of campiness and archness this brings to the Frankenstein canon. I think it's like just a taste thing for my part, where I liked the reservedness, how subdued the first one was in comparison. And similarly, I think that there's an audience that would find the first movie like brutally boring in comparison to this one. I kind of agree with this sentiment by James Whale when he was originally developing Bride of Frankenstein, or developing a sequel to Frankenstein, that he squeezed the idea dry for the original. I don't know if there was really much more to add in terms of the story of Frankenstein. Definitely more to add in terms of financial recoupment. I like the design of the Bride of Frankenstein, and I liked the actual revelation that she was afraid of Frankenstein. I think that was a wonderful turn of what subversion of our expectations of what the finish of this movie would be. I have my reservations about Karloff kind of playing third or fourth fiddle in this movie, for a movie where Karloff was top billing. It's a little weird how comparatively little we get of the monster. Yeah, this sequel for me wasn't the presentation of the monster that I really enjoy or I resonate with, but I do think it's a sequel that made the character more exciting, more culturally accessible, and kind of displaced the icon from a fixed horror icon into something that's gradually more approachable, something that's more action oriented, or a character that goes from being completely mute to speaking a few words. Like, the identity is being displaced to something that is more and more culturally identifiable. Of monster that smokes, he can advertise for Lucky Strike. Yeah, that was the Bride of Frankenstein. I guess you could say it's comparable to, like, Scorsese getting that bag and getting like Netflix money or Apple money. Like, it's nice to see when directors get the bag and get to realize their visions more. Financially. Yeah, I don't know. But this has got me interested, or I've been playing this for a while. I am a bit fatigued on this sequel, but I am interested in doing another Frankenstein property. So I think the time is right. We should check out one of the spiritual children of Frankenstein and watch The Spirit of the Beehive. Hey guys, welcome back to Pillbox Movies. Today we're going to be watching the 1973 Spanish film The Spirit of the Beehive, or El Espíritu de la Colmena. This is a film by director Victor Erice. It's actually his debut film. The film charts the life of a 6-year-old girl living in a Catalonian village in 1940s Franco Spain. The movie has been touted as one of the great childhood films, one of the great subtly anti-Francoist films from its generation. And yeah, This is a continuation of our series on Frankenstein films. The movie is actually a reflection of Frankenstein and the themes of that movie. So yeah, without further ado, let's watch The Spirit of the Beehive. And before we get started, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. Well, I wonder what that portends. Oh, that's cool. It's a mobile cinema. It's Frankenstein. Everybody bringing their own chairs. That's so sweet. Good evening.
Se trata de la historia del Doctor Frankenstein, un hombre de ciencia que intentó crear un ser vivo. Trata de los grandes.
Oh, there's Anna Torrent. Or Anna. One of the odd hobbies, pseudo hobbies I keep, the hobbies that you watch on YouTube but don't actually do in your real life. But I watch a few beekeeping YouTubers. Fascinating hobby. This actor, Fernando Gomez, he kind of does look like a little bit like Boris Karloff.
Pido a Dios que me conceda la alegría de volver a encontrarte. Sé que nos separamos en medio de la guerra, pero a veces, cuando miro a mi alrededor y descubro tantas ausencias, algo me dice que quizá con ellas se fue nuestra capacidad para sentir de verdad la vida.
I do wonder if this will follow a kind of trend with the score, with the sepia. I do wonder if it will follow along a kind of a fantastical or fairy tale kind of disposition, similar, I guess, to Pan's Labyrinth, where a child's eyes will kind of like take in historical events and then process it through the language of storytelling, through fairy tales and through fables. What kind of Spain will he return back to, if he does even return? So this is set like right after the Spanish Civil War, I guess, and precedes the Second World War. Just so much conflict in this time, in this land. This wonderful yellow glow to this room. Almost looks like you're in a Bertolucci film, or in a Vittorio Storaro film. It was the window panes. I didn't even realize that was dialogue from the movie. It's this wonderful dreamlike state, the sound of the movie permeating throughout this village. Looking back, I love that little push-in the Frankenstein movie. Just like the camera settling in with them, you're kind of accepting their tempo, their rhythm. You're accepting that this may be a good exchange. She's already, at such a young age, questioning the veracity of death. or the veracity of the justification, the justice in murder. Mentira.
Alguien a quien yo enseñaba últimamente en mi colmena de cristal. Alguien que veía a las claras la agitación innumerable de los panales, la actividad diversa e incesante de la multitud, el esfuerzo despiadado e inútil, el sueño ignorado fuera de las cunas que ya acecha el trabajo de mañana, el reposo mismo de la muerte. Alguien que miraba esas cosas no tardó en apartar la vista, en la que se leía no sé qué triste espanto.
It's a poetic sentiment. I think sometimes like the dulling effect, it's a cool effect, but the democratization of like YouTube videos of exploring different subjects, I think that sometimes that loses the effect or is contrary to the effect of what cinema or storytelling or narratives do, which is to take a certain perspective on things that falls neither in the realm of the explanatory or the consumable. It turns them into metaphors on which you lay on your dreams, your beliefs, and you hold on to that dream more than you hold on to the reality. You can get a weird sense of their relationship, that they kind of live in each other's shadows, that they're never in the same room at the same time, or one of them is conscious when the other one's unconscious. It's also a weird observation, like the observation that Fernando gives of the beehive through the glass structure. We're also observing lives inside of this beehive through the spectrums, through the structure of a camera lens.
Don José puede andar, puede respirar. Puede comer. ¿Qué es lo que todavía
Los
le falta a don
ojos.
José?
Los ojos.
Muy bien.
Ven a ponérselos.
Oh, this is an interesting a play on their they're watching Frankenstein, obviously, because they watched that scene, the scenes of his kind of construction, and now they're kind of constructing an artificial human themselves. You can really see Anna Torrent is helped by catch lights by having a light directed towards her face or her eyes. She doesn't play as well being backlit. Anna, why don't you go in there? You should see for yourself. Maybe she will. Curious Anna. I never really thought of these things. I thought of this for Yella as well. Just the profile of Nina Hoss, the ways that she works in certain ways of being filmed. It's true of all actors and actresses, but I'm getting more of a sense that Anna Torrent is an actress that plays particularly well in enclosed spaces, that she's kind of an indoor cat kind of actress. It's a really weird sense that we're getting of this family. I'm going to pause for a second. There's this really weird sense that we're getting of this family, the way that it's shot. There's a depiction of this family as like living in different like time zones, different like pockets of time that they barely ever interact with each other on screen or within the structure of the household. And it gives kind of a weird kind of, it gives you a sense of their like family identity, that they are all kind of like enclosed from each other, occupying their own like isolated spaces, and they don't really interact with each other. They don't have like the same kind of like comfort and familiarity that you'd expect from a movie family, and it hasn't really been communicated at all through dialogue, because they're not perhaps the kind of family that like speaks to each other in this way. It's all done just through the use of like isolated scenes, shooting them being awake at different times, talking to different people or talking apart from one another, like Anna and Isabel obviously talk and interact with each other. Fernando talks with a village woman, and Teresa is writing her letter and going out to the train station. But in just a few short scenes, we get a sense of this family that isn't necessarily broken or anything, but there's like an underlying fracture between them or amongst them. Maybe it's just the kind of family they are. It's not necessarily like saying a bad thing about them or characterizing like eventual breakage of the family, but just noting the way that they kind of like behave with each other or interact with each other. Even the way that their father was listening to the soundtrack to Frankenstein while they were watching the film, that Teresa was at the train station, they were at the cinema, and he was listening in from the house. So this is an interesting upheaval of that now, where they finally have a scene with their father.
¿Veis aquel monte? Allí está el jardín de las setas, como él lo llamaba.
¿Por qué no vamos?
Uy, está muy lejos.
She's like a little Simba. She's content in her garden, but she doesn't know how big the world is outside, how many different miracles and wonders and stories there are beyond the borders. Okay, let's not say Simba. Let's say Siddhartha.
Mirad lo que hay aquí. Un auténtico demonio. No la olvidéis, hijas. Es la peor de todas. La más venenosa.
Are we getting another poison narrative with Ana Torrent? Like Cría Cuervos? This is inspiring in her the same questions with regards to Frankenstein. She didn't know if Frankenstein had killed the little girl and why Frankenstein needed to be killed, and she's seeing a similar story play out, that her father says that this mushroom is dangerous, it's poisonous, and so he has to stamp it out so that's not a threat to other people, but she doesn't understand this idea of it being a threat to other people. Because it isn't hurting anybody. Another example of the family, especially the divide between Fernando and Teresa, that they're at different levels of the household, that it seems like they're never in the same room. Oh, look how cavernous that is. That's so... Oh, that cascade of like of door frames. It's like that shot in Citizen Kane. It's like that shot in Spellbound. Yeah, they're like in a house that's like too big for their family. It's like completely emptied out or barren. You actually wonder if there was once like a larger family that might have been here, but if the Spanish Civil War or perhaps even World War II had taken away like the young men or the cousins or the Fuller family that used to occupy this space, and them kind of like performing these like masculine routines in the absence of men, you kind of realize that Fernando is the sole man in this household.
Ríos de vida. Topáis aire que el aire me falta. ¿Qué ves en el fondo oscuro?
And that's right, because they're in like a girls' class or a girls' school, we don't see any of the young boys in the town either. I mean, we see a couple of them at the movie screening, but we don't see any teenagers, we don't see any adolescent boys. There's a kind of feeling of absence of men within this town or within this village. These train tracks again. Seemingly only carrying cargo or carrying soldiers. I love the sound of trains. It's from a bygone era, but I think they're one of the most powerful images you can, from the beginning of cinema history itself, I guess. It's one of the most powerful symbols, images, orally, visually, that you could represent on screen. I think like trains connect with the movie screen in like a weirdly primal way. 21st century could use more trains and movies. you really do get a lovely sense of this kind of like longing, this unfulfilledness in Teresa. With very little dialogue, she presents us very little character interactions, very little admissions, but just her playing the piano, her sitting in empty rooms, her, strangely enough, not being so attentive to Anna or Isabel, except for a few scenes, gives us this sense of like real loneliness that she's living in. Always on that bicycle, always on the way to the train station. Oh, it's haunting. Oh, I didn't even notice the window panes are also mirroring the honeycombs. So before, when I was making the comparison, even more so, that's reinforced by the honeycomb window panes that encloses this room. That's likely Fernando's study. That's washed in this yellow light. That Fernando and perhaps his family are bees trapped in an artificial hive. It's a wonderful kind of image for this family or for this estate. This like kind of like enclosed, gently trapped estate where they're like stuck in time, where they keep on reproducing the effects of the day, but it doesn't feel like they're going anywhere. It doesn't feel like they're developing anything. That all they do during the day is repeat actions in the hopes that they will delay their inevitable deaths, like the deaths of the bees in the beehive. There's this wonderful feeling, morbid, sad, but wonderful also feeling of these children, of their childhood, feeling like they're stuck in molasses or something, that their childhood is, their state of being is stuck in this moment, and they don't know how to progress to the next development. Everything in childhood feels like chrysalis. It's a really beautiful depiction of an empty household. You really don't see movies like portray this feeling so often. I feel bad talking over it, but I'm like obliged to. So just to say that this is a wonderful movie to watch on your own and get this sensation of an empty house and of a family and of children. All of them are locked away in their own private jewelry boxes. I was expecting this to be something more like Pan's Labyrinth, like a fantasy war drama. It's very, very different in tone. It doesn't try to advance itself with like plot or the fantastical. It's more like a psychological drama. Seeing this family or these children, Isabel or Anna, kind of like Frankenstein, like trapped in a moment between being an innocent or a monster. Oh my god, all of those corridors, it's so beautifully expressed. Just the divides in this household, the bifurcation or the segmentation of this household. It is in its own way a kind of Xanadu. Oh no.
Isabel, anda, levántate, no seas boba.
God, that yellow light. It's so beautiful. It's so haunting. It really reinforces the feeling of the glass shining on them, the idea that they're encapsulated. That all of these moments are like hidden away from the outside world. I want to say it's so beautiful, it's so sad, that the children like find a kind of comfort inside of this household, that they're given like free reign. They're allowed to explore as much as they like to, but they don't know that what they like or what their curiosity is like cut off at the like 4 walls of the manor. Like in Innocence, there's like a crisis of like, in here they're arguably safe or safer than they would be outside, but they're trapped. They're trapped in their innocence and their ignorance. All these closed doors to this house. It's so wonderfully constructed. It's so psychological. It's so true to childhood. It feels like akin to like Fanny and Alexander, and yet different, but a similar presentation of this very, very quiet household. And it's very quiet because the people who live in it they love each other. They comfort each other. They're a comfort and joy. But there's that seed of sorrow, that seed of childhood innocence, of being left alone and left to your imagination, that makes it a lonely household. That makes it feel like a dream. That makes it feel like it'll go on forever. Just gonna meet a stranger with a limp, like the monster Frankenstein. And this is a beautiful, I don't want to get too weird about it, but this is a beautiful kind of intersection of like, the intersection of her childhood innocence with like the first like rumblings of adulthood. Not to say that she's like sexually intrigued by him or whatever, but this is her first encounter on screen within our knowledge as an audience, her first interaction with an adult man that isn't her father. And it's like it kind of like a horror, but an intrigue for her, in the same way with Frankenstein, in the same way with that mushroom, that she sees something that other people identify as a threat, as the potential for violence, and she sees it as somebody to connect with, to try and reach, to try and understand, and to try and rescue. And it's that curiosity, like the tree of knowledge. It's not like necessarily the sexual metaphor component of it, but it's that curiosity that awakens her first steps into seeing the world as being made up of the outside as opposed to the inside. And he holds time in his hands. I actually wonder if we've ever heard a clock in the household. This might be the first time that she's introduced to time as a concept within the film. The idea of advancement, the idea of progression, as opposed to repetition that she's used to. Girl, you're too young to be nursing a soldier back to health. But okay. We all have our own awakenings. Oh, Jesus. Is she gonna think that she's responsible? Kids are so stupid. She's gonna think that she's responsible. They took his pocket watch, these mother... Is she gonna recognize it? Nobody knows that she's met this man. That's so sad. I guess that's what this experience is. This experience of childhood is like this private event. This thing that's locked away in your memories and nobody else has access to it. These things that are so important to you that you feel like you're the only person who's ever witnessed it. And in a way you are. But her private moments are going to have a rude and brutal public awakening, or public revelation. Ugh. In the movie house too. It's terrible. It's terrible. It might make you think that fascist regimes aren't a good thing. I think it would be better that we never know. We never know what this soldier did, good or bad, if he was a deserter, if he was a murderer. It doesn't matter. Our only interaction with him, our only knowledge of him, is how Anna interacted with him, how Maria interacts with the monster. Her father has a pocket watch now. That's terrible. That's even worse than I thought was going to happen. Now her father's going to forever be like a stranger or a liar or something bad to her. This is some like Alice in Wonderland kind of like psychological shit. This will f you up for the rest of your life. What does she even see her father as now? That's so much worse than I thought it was going to be. This also ties into another movie featured on this channel, Parallel Mothers, the sensation that people will just go missing. Jesus. That there's no body to bury or to give rights to have a funeral over. Because in this era, under these regimes, people just disappear. What is she going to think of you? For the rest of her life, what is she going to think of you? Who is the monster? You've done something terrible. And you don't know that your daughter knows that about you, but she does. In some way, it'll be written on your face for the rest of your life. And at a certain point, the house becomes too small for her. Because she can't live in there with people who have done these things. She can't live in that household with those lies anymore. Yeah, childhood is painful. God. This movie has exquisitely like condensed so many of the feelings of childhood, of oppressive regimes, of all these feelings of discord and distrust and uncertainty about the world into such a streamlined narrative. So little happens in this movie, and yet it pulsates with all this confusion over the world. Don't eat the poison cap. Another Alice in Wonderland connection as well. Oh, that's her dad. I do like, I maybe they like deliberately took the color out, but in this like nighttime sequence, it's like desaturated, almost like they're in a black and white film. It doesn't quite have the hand movements down the way that Karloff did. She'll have to get over it if she wants to exist in this regime. Poco a poco. Let the spirits come to you. You're his friend, that's right. Is she hearing the train? Oh. So what do you think that Anna does at the end of that? Do you think that she leaves when she gets the opportunity? She gets on the train, she tries to find somewhere else? Do you think she lives out the rest of her life in that household? Dreaming of a different reality, thinking that she's seen a different reality, and living with all those dreams inside of that household to appease her family, to appease the natural order? Does Anna go off and try and find the world that she caught a glimpse of, or will she have to live in fantasies for the rest of her life? Yeah, this was great. I don't know, this is one of the great films of Spanish history, probably one of the great films of all time. I don't really need to sing its praises anymore so than you've probably seen from other venues. I think I've said as much as I can over the course, or as much as I want to at this point, with how the film handles the delicacy of its storytelling, the delicacy of the lattice work it does in terms of the family history. It's the way that they interact with each other, just like really, really thoughtful, simple, and yet kind of like elusive or illusory kind of storytelling in this, where it really doesn't explain like anything and expects you as an audience member to like figure things out or to insinuate yourself into the story, to kind of like fill in the gaps with yourself, and you become really invested in it as a result. Like the storytelling of why the mattress isn't there, why Isabella's mattress isn't there, who knows why. There's maybe I'm completely right and that was the simple logical explanation for it. Maybe there's something else, but I had to like figure that part of the story out, where I had to figure out why Anna was drinking as much water as she did, why they decided to focus on that. There's just these little details that are painted in for you to find and for you to hone in on, and none of the story feels expositional. It's beautifully wrought story, condensing like all of this kind of wonder and terror of childhood, of paranoia, and of distrust of family hierarchies, of governmental hierarchies, and transforming it into this really, really lovely tale. This really tragic horror story, like Frankenstein perhaps is a tragic horror story. This fascination with the outsider who is met with anger, violence from the village people, from people you thought you knew, and to see them turn so quickly to violence, it turns the world around for you. It's a beautifully told story. I think, like I said, there are comparisons that can be made on a literal level to like parallel mothers on this channel. I think on like thematic or conceptual levels, you'd also, if you like this, you should also check out Cría Cuervos, Fanny and Alexander, I don't know, Bicycle Thieves, The 400 Blows. I'm thinking of child performances now. Yeah, I was a bit surprised. There's sometimes when I watch a movie, especially for the channel, I throw out kind of like suppositions as to how the narrative will develop, or how thematic ideas will be stated and developed as the film progresses. And a few of the ones that I postulated on that I thought would be a bit more far-fetched turned out to be, at least to my understanding, what Erice was going for. I'm really surprised by how deeply layered the film managed to be in within such a condensed narrative. And really from the beginning, with each image and with each interaction, he was thinking really about construction, about layering all these different aspects on top of each other to give like a full portrait of life in this town, life within this family, life within the head of this 6-year-old girl. It's a beautiful piece of work. Yeah, that was Spirit of the Beehive. Let me know if you've seen it, if you have any thoughts on it. In the meantime, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. And until next time, keep watching good movies.